Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Coaches, One Topic. And today is going to be a great topic, especially with everybody coming back off holidays for the summer and getting ready to go back to work and to school and to uni. Today I'm joined by Kelly and Maz, and as always I'm going to pass you over to Kelly first so she can tell you a little bit about herself and where she's dialing in from. Over to you, Kelly.
Hey Donna, thank you. So it's a pleasure being here, and my name is Kelly Turner. I'm based in Wales in the UK. I'm founder of Authentically Rise Coaching, and I'm also a student doing my master's in humanistic psychotherapy. So this is very reflective of my passion about understanding being human and how we operate in our lives. So my coaching style is very much creating space for people to start tuning in more to themselves, tuning into their emotion, the inner landscape, so that they can make purposeful changes in their lives. And that is me.
Thank you so much. And you've just done a Three Coaches, One Topic with Mary Rita talking about transpersonal psychology and coaching.
Yeah.
So it's all about us being human and getting in touch with ourselves, which was an enlightening topic. So thank you so much for that. And I, as you know, I love having you on, Kelly. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And Maz, welcome to the first time to Three Coaches, One Topic.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Great. Now, I'm looking forward to this one because I know when we first met and you told me what you did, I got extremely excited. And it was just like, right, you've got to come on. I don't know if you want to or not, but you're coming. But please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, that meeting was, I think sometimes you meet people and you just feel like it's meant to be. So yeah, I'm a health and resilience coach and consultant, and I specialize in burnout prevention. So I've spent my life promoting and studying holistic health and resilience and the relationship that they have together, and have done a lot of research and work with burnout, and I've done a lot of work with people with various different needs, from young offenders, kids with serious illness, to people affected by extreme trauma, affected by PTSD, this kind of thing. And I think very much my work at the moment, I'm based in the UAE, and it's my work at the moment is very much promoting awareness of holistic health, and the effects of modern life on burnout. So I run a company called Life is for Living, which is very much my life motto. So yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And when you were telling me about all those lovely strands and branches and people that you support and help, and how you incorporate the physical and the whole holistic side, both of you, well, I think all three of us are very about the whole person. So yeah, I got very, very excited about that. And I know you'll be sharing some of your past experiences and tools and strategies that you've used to support people. Before we get onto the topic, I'm Donna Burfield, and I'm a joy and purpose coach, and I also run a coaching community which is just going international, and it's called CSC International Community. And Kelly is going to be one of the team coaches there, and we've got a great team of coaches who are all certified, accredited. Oh my gosh, the wealth, not just to do with coaching, but what each of us have done outside of coaching. So we are definitely going to be there to support other coaches who wish to join that community. So, right, let's get onto this topic, because I have definitely been feeling this lately. And today we're talking about a burnout breakdown, and we're going to look at recognizing, understanding, and intervention. One of the things that I would like to throw out there, first of all, is if you're happy to share, have any of you suffered with burnout at all during your tender years on this earth.
Do you want to go first, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm happy to. If I was to start right from, if I was to kind of reflect now where I am, I believe I was in a lot of anxiety without realizing I was in anxiety and operating from that kind of fight flight for quite some time, because I got so used to feeling like it. And I became quite normalized to kind of operating from that place. But it was just over a decade ago that I had been working, and I was in highly stressful jobs, and beknown to me at the time, I was operating from a kind of place of people pleasing and perfectionism, which was survival strategies for when I didn't know any better, when I couldn't access anything more. From a kind of younger lens, this is kind of my higher intelligence, how to kind of be connected, be accepted, be belonged, and attached. We'll always pick attachment over authenticity. So I kind of lost my way of, I was feeling, but I was not listening. So I kept pushing through everything I think I needed to be, rather than listen to what I needed. So my self-worth, my sense of self was validating between my career, my successes, how I was pleasing people, attuning to what other people's expectations were from me. And this was, at that time, was very unconscious, but it was driving my life. And it got to a point where I was very emotional. I didn't get to kind of the kind of really kind of numb, but I felt helpless. I felt quite helpless. I felt stuck. I felt weekends, Friday, I would be, yes, it's the weekend. By Saturday morning, I was emotional. I was started really dreading the Monday. I would be just uncontrollably crying. My nervous system felt like I just couldn't settle. And so I kept busy, just trying to regulate myself, basically. But I didn't know what I know now, but I was just trying to keep busy, try to do something. And my husband now, but he wasn't my husband then, said, you can't live like this, Kelly. And I needed somebody to say that to me, because I just kept on trying to push through. So I ended up moving out of the city. I was in London at the time. And that is when the first time, I think, ever, I left my job. And I remember sitting, and my husband was working long hours. So it was just me and my puppy. And I remember sitting in the living room, and I was like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I thought it was something wrong with me. And it was like, when you put two electricity currents together and they spark, that's what I could literally feel it in my body. And I'm thinking, and I didn't have the energy. I felt very depleted, even though I wasn't doing anything. And I reckoned it took me a good couple of months for me to kind of winding myself down, to start to feel that electric current that kept on sparking up inside of me, to kind of settle. So yeah, I've definitely experienced it. And I feel very fortunate at the time, even though it brought up a lot of other stuff coming away from my career, because I was over-identified with it. That was where all my worth was. So it brought up a lot of other stuff. And I had to be kind of mindful, because then I could cause more stress in my body, because then I was shaming, well, who am I now? I'm not living to, well, like, who am I without my job, And I had to kind of work through that too. But, I kind of visualize, like a glass, and then stress is like pouring in some water, and then all of a sudden you're not kind of allowing that glass to kind of empty. My glass was never empty. It was just keep them being topped up and overflow, and it got to a point of overflowing. And that's where I had to kind of step away and make changes, which I did need my husband to kind of direct me out, because I honestly believe I just would have kept pushing through.
Yeah, you see, that's the scary part. You do sometimes need that outside person who can see things, because when you're in it, you're in that survival mode. And I'm sure lots of people that are going to be listening to this will definitely resonate with that. Thank you so much, Kelly. Maz, what about yourself? What showed up for you?
So actually, it's an interesting part of my journey to where I am now in many ways. I had a pretty traumatic childhood, and it was much later in my life that I started to learn about the experiences that I've gone through. You know, stress it affects us all, firstly, and secondly, it affects us all differently. But there are patterns and there are learnings that we can apply to stress in general and to our experience of stress and to the treatment of stress. And I think it's very much the experience of my own life, my own stress, my own trauma, that then led me to start reading and researching and studying the psychology of stress, resilience, and burnout and burnout prevention, which has really, led me to where I am now. And that relationship that stress has with other elements of health, like physical health, and the impact, for example, of physical activity. So it's I think been a crucial part in my journey to where I am now. So yeah.
So with that, can either of you, both of you, explain what is the difference between burnout and maybe depression, or are they really quite interlinked?
I would say burnout is more generic, and depression can be part of burnout. So while depression looks specifically at the emotional health, burnout is looking at all dimensions of health. So we're looking at physical, mental, social, emotional health all together. Very often, depression comes with burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, Kelly? Or
yeah, I think a part of it is, I think exactly what Maz says, is that there can be different kind of reasons why what we've led to burnout. And for me, for example, it definitely started from my early life and how I felt I needed to be in the world, that allowed me not to kind of listen to myself. Mm-hmm. So then that ended me into more of a kind of anxiety cycle, because I was always kind of looking outward. Who do I need to be? How do I please that person? How do I mask all these feelings? How do I mask I've got it all together? And that came with a different stress. For some people, for example, they could have a trauma, and how that kind of trauma manifests in their life. So I think the reason why people can come out from burnout and how that manifests is going to be so different. And exactly what Maz says, I think, is really looking at things very holistically, and seeing the person and the kind of roots of what has got you to this point. And that comes with a lot of awareness, curiosity, looking at ourselves through a really kind of compassionate lens. And I found, having been able to do that, we need to feel safe.
Yeah.
And safety is so I can't emphasize how important it is to feel safe. And I'm just aware there might be some people out there that might be I'm resonating with this, but I'm in a real toxic relationship, for example. So that safety isn't there on a day-to-day basis. And even though I'm not here to tell people what to do, but it's going, okay, how can I find that safety? So that might be, I have a friend that I go to, and when I'm in their company, I really feel I can just unmask a bit and I just feel safe in their presence. It could just be, there might be a place. It could be, for me, when I started, my husband was working long hours, I just immersed myself in nature. And I still do it now. If I'm going through an emotional time, I just flee to nature, hold me, and that's where I feel safe. And that's going to be different for everybody. So I'm aware some people will already be able to cultivate that safety in their lives now, and some people it's going to be that little bit harder. But it's always to go, okay, how can I make this happen for me, where I can get those pockets of safety while maybe you're figuring out a difficult situation or home life that you might be in.
I love that you mentioned that, because, too many times you'll hear a lot of people turn around and say, well, you're going to have to change your environment, change your job, change your partner, change. But sometimes in the real world, you can't. You're stuck where you're living. You're stuck with your partner to a certain extent for the short time. And it's not as easy. But as you were saying, Kelly, even those little things, pockets of joy of where you feel that safe, and there is that change of environment. So it doesn't have to be a drastic, you're moving halfway across the country and you got a divorce and got a new job, that sort of thing. So it is about looking at. Now, I'm fascinated to know how can you help people that have just come off holiday, especially like here in the UAE. We get like nearly 6 weeks, 8 weeks off for the summer holiday. A lot of the mums disappear with the kids, come back, same as the fathers, and then they've got to go back to work. And their first day on the job, they feel like they haven't had a holiday. So how do they talk to themselves? Are they still going through burnout if they've just had a break?
I think a really interesting one there is a note that burnout is not tiredness. So you can have as many breaks as you like, but there's a lot more to burnout than just being tired. And I think that's where it comes into it. It's such a holistic topic. And I guess the question then is, what is burnout? But it's so holistic that, yes, tiredness, exhaustion, procrastination, brain fog are huge elements of burnout. And yet, does a good night's sleep solve that? No, because the issues are so much deeper and so much more holistic and so individual.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant, because this is why I wanted to bring it up, because, a lot of times people could go back to work and their boss or what have you could turn around and say, well, you've just had a holiday. So they don't take those symptoms or flags seriously, because in their mind, you've just had 2, 3, 4 weeks off.
Yeah. And I just love how Maz really brings us back into that kind of holistic aspect, which I think even in our medical model now is still missing. Even though the word gets splattered about, it's truly missing. And I do believe a lot of it. If I was to I only can speak from my real true experience, and sometimes what I see in my work is this kind of misattunement to ourselves. And then things kind of build. It's like layers, and we don't even notice it. Well, for me, I didn't know. I didn't notice how much it was building inside my system, because as a culture, we normally celebrate our status, our responsibility, and everything is more measured out here, what we put out in the world, rather than celebrate. Oh wow, look at that person really honoring themselves and listening to themselves. So I think even when we kind of take our first breath in this world, we're already being conditioned, unless we've had extremely good parenting, that are really attuned parents, that it's already not in our culture to go, okay, it's really important to listen to yourself first, give to you first before you give out here. And even when you look at, bit controversial now, even if you look at the education system, if they're sick, physically sick, then we go, oh yeah, of course you can have a day off, don't spread your viruses or whatever. But when do we say have a mental health day off, or oh yeah, my children is really emotional and they need an emotional day off. I feel that it's still not seen the same as if you're physically sick. So these messages are being integrated into our systems from a really young age, from family life, or cultural life, or education, everything. It's just all these messages that we get. Don't listen to yourself. Keep going. Yay, well done. Or if you're a carer and you're looking after someone, oh, you're so kind. You're so kind. Look at you putting other people before yourself. You know, it's celebrated. And we need to kind of change this message that we're giving out to our young as well. That's my perspective anyway.
No, I agree. But unfortunately, there's always going to be people that take, and you've got to put those procedures, and there's an awful lot of trust, that has to go on within building that environment. So, people sometimes dig their own graves when they start taking advantage of something. So,
yeah. And
but yeah, definitely.
You just remind me, I read somewhere that I think it was Gabor Mati's work, and I think he was saying even with doctors, and this goes with all care and professions, they were still operating, but 44% of this national study was that they were in burnout. So people are, really kind of pushing through. And I come from, it feels like my past life, come from like the NHS and nursing. And I've had to always check in, am I rescuing? And, we can kind of, I was wearing a rescuer's hat for a long, long time without realizing I was doing that, trying to save people, trying to sort people out, trying to do too much for others and neglect myself. And the kind of roles I did, kind of just allow me to do that very easily. And I didn't have that awareness of where I was operating at, what part was in the driving seat. And I wasn't reflecting. I just was doing what I thought was right, because I didn't know anything different. And that definitely was a big part of me coming to a point where I just felt completely, on every level, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, I just felt I can't do anymore. I just really did feel I had to pause, I had to stop. And I didn't even know what the answer was, but I just couldn't keep going.
Yeah. So when you've got that mental awareness, Maz, you're great at doing this, of combining the physical as well with the mental. So what are some of the things that people need to look out for, and how can they, still take care of the physical, because the physical is going to look after the mental, and the mental is going to look after the physical.
Yeah. I guess this goes back right to the very beginning, which is something I did a lot of research into, which is, okay, what is the definition of burnout? And I looked at the World Health Organization definitions. I looked at all, lots of other definitions. And with my history in holistic health, bringing the physical body element with the mind and the emotions, I came out with a definition that I use, which is burnout is the result of pushing our minds and bodies beyond their limits on a regular basis for a prolonged period of time. So we've got a big element here, which I highlight hugely, is beyond their limits or beyond their capacity. And I think one of the biggest issues we have in life, and this is a word that Kelly touched on, is our culture. And the culture here is huge, because actually it's the culture that is pushing the increase in burnout. But the culture is that it's normal for us to go beyond our limitations, to go beyond our capacity. And actually it's not just normal, but it's expected. And this is what is making life so dangerous. And when we say beyond our capacity, let's just think of a couple of examples. Sleep. We need 7 to 9 hours sleep every night in order to function properly. How many people go beyond their capacity in that area? Diet. We need decent diet. We need nutrients. We need the right number of carbs, protein, and fats in order to function properly. We need minerals and vitamins. How many people are going beyond their capacity and not getting that? Water. How many people are not actually drinking any water and live on tea, coffee, and alcohol every day beyond their capacity? Then you think of the more mental and emotional side of things. We are communal beings. We need company, and yet modern life is pushing us away from community living further and further every day, to the extent that some of the people I work with are families who are completely disconnected. People live in the same household as each other, and yet they don't know the people that they're living with, because they're pushing themselves beyond their capacity. We need contact. We need human contact to be human beings, to operate fully. And the science behind, for example, the science of a hug. It's amazing how a hug affects our health scientifically, not just putting a smile on your face, which does actually scientifically improve your health. But so when we look at the element then of going beyond our capacity, and this is such a huge issue, because society and culture that Kelly mentioned, I jumped on that word when you said it, Kelly, because culture in our society is driving the increase of burnout. We are living in a society where power and profit is taking priority over community, humanity, sanity. How can we maintain our humanity, maintain the core of who we are, our authenticity, when we are being driven to become machines? We are being driven to be something that we are completely not. So this is, in a nutshell, where this global rise of burnout is coming from. And a big part of what I do in a lot of my workshops is start looking at how do we safely challenge the norms, whether that be within the company or within global culture. Because without challenging global norms, we go down that line ourselves of becoming a computer, becoming a nobody. We're removing our humanity. So yeah, it's very much going back to your question, Donna. Sorry, I've deviated slightly, because I think it was really important to emphasize where this problem is coming from. So we go on holiday and we step off the conveyor belt, and we become human. We live, we engage with our family, we breathe, we might focus on exercise, we might focus on decent food, we might drink water for the first time all year. And then in the few days, in the few weeks going back to work, our stress levels rise because we start to get anxious about going back to work. And then we go back to work. We're back on the conveyor belt. Our humanity, our authenticity, our lifestyle of the healthy variety goes out the window again. So one of my big focuses, we talk about this work-life balance. And I say very firmly, no, there is no such thing as a work-life balance. When you talk about a work-life balance, you are saying that work and life are two different things. And if we're making them two different things, well, you're throwing your life away, because you have to have work and life together. So for me, my priority when I'm working with corporates is to bring life back into the workplace. So when you're talking about people going back to work, this is what I would focus on, is what elements of your life make you human, make you sane, make you the authentic person that you are. And then how do you take those elements and bring them into the workplace with you?
No, I love this. And I just really want to just jump back to what you were saying, because I loved your passion and I was behind you 100%. And I'm just going to put it out there. It's taught behavior. And this isn't blaming schools. This is looking at education for our children. The amount of stress and pressure they are put on from starting their mock exams. You're looking at year 9, 10, right up to the GCSEs. and then going on to their A-levels or what have you. But the most stressful time is when they're doing those 8, 9, 10 subjects. I remember going into my daughter's school and for a parents' meeting, and I turned around to them, the teachers, and said, there's going to start being a time frame. It's because I miss my daughter. I don't recognize my daughter. The way she started to change, her mental health, she started to get snappy. She hadn't seen the sun. She wasn't eating properly, you know, and it was a case of there is going to be a cutoff time. So I loved my daughter too much to see her going down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, there's so much there, and there's so much what Maz just said, or you said, Donna. And I think, you know, if loads of things came up for me as I was listening, but I just wanted to, you know, I think a little bit is where our motivation comes from as well. I think coming back to the culture, we're so conditioned for a motivation to be external. But I think there needs to be much more emphasis. What is my internal motivation? What drives me? And we need to nurture authenticity. You know, if that is as an adult, which I've had to learn myself, or this better as in children and changing things. And, you know, I can hear how you touched on boundaries, you know, and I had to learn how to have boundaries because that was something new to me, especially learning to survive through people pleasing and perfectionism. So boundaries is really important. But I was really curious as well, which I'm kind of circling back to something Maz says. I just, because I'm very aware sometimes, you know, with these, when we talk about culture and pushing through and forcing and what's celebrated as being human, is sometimes people may do certain things to help regulate themselves. So that could be things like exercising. And I'm just wondering, in your work, do you sometimes see people put in more stress on themselves from over exercising? You know, like if they're kind of trying to prove something to themselves by pushing something in that direction. And, you know, I'm just curious if you've seen that.
Yeah, to be honest, I have seen it, but not so much these days. It is an issue, of course. But it tends to be now, if somebody is intrinsically motivated, they tend to push themselves, but they also tend to know their limits and be more in touch with themselves. So it's more the extrinsic motivation, people who need, you know, they're doing the exercise for other people. So I get a lot more clients who need the support, who need the help and the motivation to exercise more, to create an exercise lifestyle where, you know, exercise, sport is part of their life. So that's a lot more common, certainly in my experiences.
Yeah, beautiful.
So can I ask a question? Okay, so if somebody's got that awareness and they're setting up those boundaries, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If I'm working in an organization and I've got this awareness and I understand that, you know, I'm not eating correctly, I'm not getting my sleep, and I'm trying to incorporate that and bringing life back into the workplace, and the work is, my bosses are still piling on, expect me to work overtime, turn up early, stay late, you know, sending me messages and emails at the weekend and middle of the night. What can I do? Because I'm threatening them with my job and I'm looking after my children. I'm a single parent, or I'm a husband and I've got my kids, or, you know, what can you do?
So it's very interesting, and I think this is something that came out a lot during COVID, because people started to really recognize their own stress, and really people had the time, for the first time in decades, possibly in their life, to evaluate where they are in life. And we've seen in the papers account after account of people leaving their job, doing something completely different. And it doesn't have to be extreme, but the simple fact is, if we recognize that we are experiencing stress, if nothing changes, the whole situation is not going to change. So while you continue to do the work, while you continue to work the night shifts, while you continue pushing yourself beyond your capacity, while you continue pleasing and appeasing, nothing will change. So there's conversations that need to be had. So the question then is, how do you speak to a boss and say, hey, I'm burning out, I've reached my limit? Because you then seem weak and unable, and you then risk losing your job, which is an issue that I have from a lot of clients. How do I do something about this without making myself look weak? And actually, I think we need to start as coaches, as consultants, changing people's confidence in that area and change that to being a strength. To be able to recognize your limitations is a strength. If you do not do something about it, you're going to be gone anyway. You'll be out of the company anyway. And not only will you be away from your work due to ill health, you might be disconnected from your family. You might not be able to function properly. You might lose your ability to walk, to talk properly. Extreme versions of burnout, have really dire effects. So I think we need to work at the top. We need to work with businesses. We need to work with executives and get them, really raise awareness of the effect of burnout and of pushing limitations beyond what is realistic. But also start to make it okay to speak up and start to talk about, speaking up in a constructive way, in a non-aggressive way, that is actually going to be effective rather than detrimental.
Yeah, and I think it's a fine line as well, whereas a lot of people may think that they're coping at work and they're taking it on and getting that external gratification and, titles and all the rest of it. But then when they go home, they take it out on the husband, the wife, the kids. And that's where they need to stop and say, okay, well, you may be saying yes, being a yes person and appeasing everybody else at work to the detriment of those that love and support you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I just want to add, I think it comes back to, kind of that ecology. So it's always going to be win-win-win. So exactly what Maz says, it's about how we communicate. And a lot of companies now, I don't know, in the UK especially, are all about well-being. So they got an anchor to go, well, the company has a responsibility for staff well-being. There's a lot more policies on well-being and how we look after our staff. And, we, like Maz said, there is so much research on the impact of burnout, chronic illnesses. And so it will catch up. I know it caught up with myself. So we can use what if there's a company policy on well-being that can be anchored into. But also the ecology bit is, well, the more I allow myself to look after me, the more creative I am, the more productive I am. The more I can, if you're a leader, I can lead people, I can mentor people, I can give back more. So then as a company, you get the best out of me and you get better outcomes. So there's a kind of win-win-win. When we are not, when we're kind of colluding, we've got to be aware sometimes we can fall into victimhood. I have to do this. It's my job. And then the company can become like a perpetrator. This is what we expect. And the only way we're going to change things and go, okay, I need to step into what is healthy for me, because when I step into what's healthy for me and I begin to create that change, then we don't just start to move away from this kind of like the drama triangle that can play out in companies and organizations. We start to step into more empowerment. And this is, sometimes it takes that one person to change things. And I know I've worked even in the NHS, and it was celebrated. Oh my God, you're leaving at 5 o'clock when you're paid to. It was like, oh, you know, and you know, and I concluded with it. And if I was back there now, I'd be like, no, 5 o'clock, I'm done, I got another life, you know. So, but it just, sometimes it takes one person to go, I can see what's playing out here, and it always comes back to that win, win, win. And I really want to kind of emphasize that.
No, that's great. So can I ask you, what are some of the misconceptions, and what would you say would be some of the symptoms or manifestations that would show up at work and at home? Because sometimes they can show up in different ways.
Okay, so I guess one of the things here is to emphasize that stress and burnout is 3 things. It's dynamic, it's individual, and it's a constant threat. And if you want to make an acronym out of that, go ahead. But because it's dynamic, individual, and constant, the treatment of stress and burnout also needs to be dynamic, individual, and constant. So it's different for everybody, and every single situation may be different. You know, one person might be displaying the same symptoms and be having a bad day. Another person might be going through extreme burnout. Some of the typical things to look for: exhaustion on a regular basis, procrastination, brain fog, sore muscles, lots of different physical problems, mood swings or mood changes. So you might be reacting to things completely differently to how you would normally. And then our typical is to then snap at ourselves. Why did I do that? So one of the key elements of the treatment of stress is compassion, self-compassion, and compassion to other people. And you know, this goes into working with teams. This goes into working with yourself. I run a workshop, changing toxic to teamwork. And you know, we talk about toxicity and we talk about a toxic workplace. And almost every time I've had this conversation in the workplace, people talk about a toxic person. There's no such thing as a toxic person. Toxicity comes from stress, and we are all vulnerable to being toxic and to being wonderful. The simple thing that will change how we come across to others is our own stress. So management of self and self-awareness is a really, really important thing in our treatment for ourselves and for other people. There's absolutely nothing we can do to look after ourselves if we don't have self-awareness. And awareness of ourselves will also impact other people, because if we are creating a toxic environment, that's going to rub off on other people. That's going to increase the toxicity within the office, our workplace, wherever we are working, and increase the chances of stress and burnout for other people as well. It's more contagious than COVID.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Maz beautifully said is for me personally, and what I've seen is it is sometimes, you know, our kind of, we can't settle, we can't sleep, we start to be more reactive because we're coming from stress, because obviously stress is needed. You know, there is healthy stress that Maz touched on earlier, but it's meant to be short-lived. But when we're kind of in that stress, which often we can find when you mention going on holiday, it can take us like 4 days to go, oh, is this how I'm meant to be? Because
you get sick, don't you?
Yeah, you get sick because you get so used to it.
You have your holiday. Yeah,
because you get so used. Exactly. So you get used to being probably in stress for too long. So noticing patterns. Yeah, am I getting sick a lot?
Yeah.
Am I being very reactive? Is it affecting my sleep? am I avoiding emotions? And I think that is a big piece. How have I got a relationship to my sadness, to my grief, to my fear? And the reasons why I say those emotions, because often we are okay with the other emotions, but if we deplete them, we deplete all the vitality of the joy. And so how do we experience aliveness and joy in the full capacity? Because if we don't, we're probably not processing all the other stuff. We got to, it's that kind of paradox. Nothing's good or bad. That's what I always say to my clients. It's not good or bad. It's just what you're experiencing right now. So yeah, tuning in that awareness. How do I respond to emotions? The other bits are kind of, not eating. I've seen some people that are like, I just can't eat. It really affects their guts. They can have all, like Maz said, tensions, carrying tensions. Get curious with that, rather than push through it. Just notice where am I carrying tension, and allow yourself to create space for it. But those are kind of some of the things I had. But also, big part for me, which is stepping into growing that self-awareness, is getting to know how stress manifests in ourselves. And like Maz beautifully said, that's different for everybody. And I've become more aware of my nervous system. What does it feel like when I feel safe and connected? And, sometimes when you're with somebody and it's just flow and you're like, oh my God, where did the time go? That's when I feel safe and I feel connected. I often feel that if I go out for a hike or in woodland or by the beach or look at something beautiful. And then noticing sometimes when I want to feel a little bit, I want to get out of here, I want to feel small, I want to feel invisible. Just noticing not just what is in the head, but how does that manifest in the body? How am I holding myself? What are the sensations that I'm feeling? And then fight, when we get when we get defensive and we feel we just want to kind of lash out, and we can feel a fire bubbling in our systems, and it's just really allowing ourselves to become self-aware. How does my nervous system operate in different moments? And even if that time has passed and we maybe got fire in us and we've kind of lashed out, just go, okay, how did that shape? What happened to me in that moment? And I think that curiosity piece is so important to grow that awareness, so we can understand how stress is in our own internal environments, in our bodies.
And you make an important point there, Kelly. Also, I think one of the big things that we need to do is ask those that are around us if we are sensing this. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it and you're getting that brain fog and you can't see the wood through the trees. So asking people as well, do you think I'm overreacting? Do you think I'm, as quick-witted as I usually am, or, have my sense of humor intact, or am I being quite reactive? And asking those around you that question. Because if they say yes, hopefully these are people that you like and trust, and, then that is a gateway to start having that conversation as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what Maz said earlier about compassion, because sometimes when we do come from that stress and our actions come from that stress, this is when, that I want to say maladaptive shame happens, because we start to go, oh my God, that I'm a bad person. But it's not. It's just when we can recognize, actually, okay, I'm feeling really stressed right now, and I was just coming from that part, and allowing us to recognize it, and recognizing, I'm feeling stressed. That automatically can give ourselves compassion. Then the next moments we can either focus, okay, what is it that I'm really needing? And really allow ourselves to tune to our needs, which is going to be different for everybody. But then we can take responsibility. And that communication, if another person, I apologize, I was feeling really stressed right now, I'm just needing this, and opening that communication, being vulnerable. And I know that can be much more difficult in a kind of work situation, especially depending on who leads your team and who your manager is. But there will be people, especially in our home life, where we can be vulnerable. And for me, vulnerability is so important. Vulnerability and connection is so important, along with safety.
Yeah. I'm gonna, if it's okay, Donna, I'm gonna question what you said, because I think what you said, absolutely, but I think there's a danger in asking somebody else, oh, was I, am I coming across badly? In some ways that can invite criticism, and even if it's not criticism, if we're in a low place anyway, there is a risk then that we might often perceive it as criticism. The other element there is that I would really encourage, if you are feeling something, ask yourself. And this is something in society that we are completely removed from our own feelings. For example, typical situation, something really personal these days. Oh, I think my husband's having an affair. So what will I do? I'll go onto Google. My husband is having an affair. What shall I do? So rather than attaching with ourselves and asking ourselves the question and listening to what is happening for us in our body, in our mind, we're putting it out to billions of people who we've never met before and who don't have a clue who we are. So while I completely hear, if you have people who you can really trust, then yes.
Yeah, that's otherwise, what I'm saying. Somebody close. This isn't just your going for a coffee morning and but by the way, guys.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think really take the time to listen to yourself. And if your heart is saying you're too harsh at the moment, or you're a bit distant, or you've got too much brain fog, if you're taking that time to listen to yourself and you're in touch with yourself, then actually the message will come to you. Something that Kelly was talking about, which is great, is this safety element. And I think one of the issues is that we rely on other people to create our safety. So if we have an issue at work, we blame the work culture, we blame the boss, we blame the situation. And I think one really important thing to remember here is we cannot change other people's behavior, but we can change our own. And by keeping ourselves in an assertive, responsible adult position, actually, other people will react to us very, very differently. So actually, instead of relying on other people to create this safe space for us, no, step out there and create your own safe space.
It's funny, I had this discussion with Mason and Michael on Pull Up a Sandbag, and I said pretty much the same. A lot of women saying that men don't make them feel safe, but a lot of women that don't make themselves feel safe, and that's where that has to come as well. Is that sense of self-worth and that assertiveness that we create that safety, and you have your own back, so to speak. Look, guys, we've literally got about 7 minutes left. I have loved everything that you have both shared, and there's some valuable tips. But just before we go, are there any last wisdom bombs or like 2 or 3 tips that people can start implementing or just reflecting upon?
There's something, sorry, Kelly,
go, Maz, please.
There's something Kelly said earlier, which really sparked something for me, which touches on the subject of success. And what is success? And in a culture where we are driven by profit and power, you yourself, Donna, you talked about studying and students being pushed over the humanity and the time with community and family. So I would advise people to look through what actually is success to them. What does success mean to you? And there are various exercises online where you can work out what actually does successful mean. And then it's a case of, once you've realized what success means to you, how do you implement your life? How do you run your life so that it is authentic to the values that make you successful.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Love that. Yes. Yeah. I used to talk to my students about success all the time. What is your definition? Why does that look like that? What would have to happen for it not to be successful, and what would have to happen for it to be, I love it. Kelly.
Yeah. Number one, I would say, going back to that piece of self-awareness, is introspection. So rather than put our attention out here, is starting to tune in to different sensations and feelings, so we can start to become much more aware. And that's been a huge piece for myself, is because I begin to notice, okay, something's happening for me here. There's a bit of stress building up. And this is how then we allow ourselves to meet our needs. And even if that is just, first of all, being able to go, okay, something changed for me in that moment, even if you've reacted out, but allowing ourselves to feel, those two together will start to build our capacity. So, and I just want to just put like a kind of more of a kind of, a kind of disclaimer. I'm very aware there's a lot of people out there that are operating from functional freeze, which means that they're in their jobs, it might be even like doing really well, kind of well in Western culture or whatever, well, and they like, when I say like feel your sensations, like I can't. And they find that really difficult to kind of get into their sensations, to get into their emotional landscape. And what I want to say, if people are resonating with that, there's nothing wrong with you, nothing. But I would recommend getting some help with someone who specializes in somatics, like somatics experiencing, or anybody who works with the body to help you get more connected to the nervous system. Because there could be a lot of survival stress, and it's important to work with that in a kind of titrated way. So I just want to put that out there. And number two, there was a number two I had, is a reflection, expectations. It's really coming home to what expectations am I living to? Where did these expectations come from? And what is really healthy for me? And what one step can I make that aligns with that healthy answer? So we can start to move the needle bit by bit of where my expectations lie. And I know that was a big thing for me, expectations and letting people down, that let down. So what we can do, we can start changing our actions aligned to what is important to us, and creating more space from old ways of being to new ways of being that are more aligned with our authentic truth.
Oh, love that. Something that comes up for me is with regards to when you're in that state, it's so noisy in your head, so noisy. And it can be suffocating as well. So sometimes you need to quieten the noise so you can actually think or not think. So getting out, I know so many people, I say this to my kids, and they're like, oh gosh, Mum, you're always saying, go for a walk or get outside, change that scenery, put away your phone, just listen to the noise, just let everything go and be quiet. Have some stillness so you can actually reflect and feel on your body, feel in your head what is going on. And it's okay. But a lot of people are scared of that quiet. They need that noise. And your body needs to rejuvenate. So look, ladies, again, thank you both so very, very much. Anybody that's watching this, Kelly and Maz will be tagged in on LinkedIn, YouTube, my Facebook and Instagram. And those that are in the CSC International Community group, there is also in the resources to go with the mental health, a whole worksheet with regards to burnout with some links and videos and articles as well. So if you're in there, please have a check. So on that note, Maz, Kelly, thank you both so very much.